Yeah, we're going to talk about, we're going to have at about the halfway point, we're going to have a little transition time here with this topic today. And I leaned into this last week because we're talking about leaders are, if it's your first time seeing this. And leaders are ... You'll see it in the caption there. It's different words and skills and different things that describe what leaders are and what they're capable of, their abilities, their skills, these different things that they can strive to be able to do. And some they're going to be really strong in, and others they may not be so much, and that's okay. And last week we talked about leaders as learners. What are we learning? What are we learning to apply to our leadership to make us better? Are we learning about those that we work with, i.e. Jim and I? We get to know each other. There's different things we talk about, different topics and stuff that may spur us on into something else. Is it something specific that came out? Training and development, those different things we can be learning from. Is it experience? That's the big one. That's the big one. I always tell everybody, let's learn from your experiences and then teach them to others. And today we're going to kick it off first with the literal term of leaders are readers. And so, usually when I bring this one up, everybody's like, oh yeah, I read books, I read magazines, I read different things. I said, okay, what are you reading? What is the thing, what are, the things that you are reading that can help you along or help you in your leadership? Or maybe it's something as simple as, I do this myself. This is something I practice. During the day, I read more serious nonfiction things, developmental things, different stuff, books covering, Christ, Jesus, leadership topics, whatever. And at night, a lot of times I'll read stuff that just is more fiction, just kind of takes my mind away from everything else, me settle in and settle down. And so Jim, to kind of kick us off, I want to know some of the different things that, and if it's specific titles, shout outs, whatever, go for it. If it's just topics, that's okay. What are some different things that you've done that you've read that you feel like just really had a massive impact on your leadership and leadership abilities? Because you've got a few of them or more than a few.
Well, one of the things is just really striving for deeper meaning. We have this thing called Google that we can go on to, right, and research certain things. And I think it really helps me really get a message out more concisely, but also give depth and understanding perspective on things, as I go in and look at details of things online. Let me give you an example. I'm very much into the words of things, but I think these things just add anything to a message to understand why the message is. We've talked about that song by Tim McGraw called To Live Like You Were Dying. So, it's really helped me understand it more by looking at the concept of what that whole concept is, just living your life to the full, just making the most out of my life, maximizing it. But also, why that song was written, right? I think you and I discussed this, if I remember right. Why was it written?
I don't remember. I knew you.
Oh, I'm sorry. It might have been Mike Van Pelt, but it was written actually because the whole song talks about him conversing with somebody basically that found out they had some sort of they were dying of something, basically, and it turns out to be cancer. Well, it helps when you understand he wrote that for his father who was dying of cancer, and so it really gives context to how it personalized it. And then in that song, he talks about, I went skydiving, I went Rocky Mountain climbing. You're familiar with that song?
Oh yeah.
And it says, and this is the part that I thought was funny. Now for me, I thought it was hilarious because I try to link things to the Asian culture, and I went 2.7 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu, which is, but when you research it, I thought it was interesting. That was not just random, I don't think, because Fu Manchu was actually a major bull that they used for breeding, So that was not, which means it would be like the bull of bulls, the alpha bull, so to speak. But when you understand different things about that song, it's like, hey, I rode the bull of bulls, it really gives things depth, understanding that song, why that song was written, in this case for Tug McGraw, his father, understanding the deeper meanings of things. But, all that comes with reading, and I'm going to add one more thing, and researching, because you learn through reading. So I love the topic of what you're bringing up today, Chris.
Yeah, and I love that. And and it doesn't have to, so many people get stuck on, well, I don't read books. That's okay. Are you reading online articles? And Jim brought up a good word, research, in that, make sure what you're reading too is especially online, make sure it's factual. Don't rely on just someone saying, oh yeah, this is what happened. Look it up, check into it. And the big thing is, and this was something that I personally, in my own leadership journey, something that I struggle with still, not near as much as I used to, was reading. I was kind of the epitome of, well, why read it when why take 2 weeks to read it? I'm a slow reader, by the way, but why take 2 weeks to read something when I can watch it in a 2-hour movie or a 2-hour video? And someone said something, and some of that speaks to the nonfiction and the fiction. In this case, this was more about the fiction. They said, well, Chris, go ahead and try it, and then allow your imagination to take over while you're reading it. Now, this was as an adult. Maybe I missed something as a kid. Someone I'm sure told me that. I don't know. But I started reading different books and just putting myself in that space and in that place without letting someone else do it. And so what reading does is it allows us to research things and find out things we never knew before. It also opens up our imagination for the things that are possible. Even in a fiction, how many fiction novels have been turned into movies that the author may or may not have ever thought could be a movie? Same thing with nonfiction. There's plenty of nonfiction books that were written that got turned into movies or documentaries or YouTube specials or now a podcast, whatever. And the thing is, without having or putting together the capabilities of us being able to do that, there's so much that we tend to lose in translation of not only facts, but also the imagination that can come from it. And the other thing too, that we cut down when we don't read on our own or collaborate with reading, we talk about leaders as collaborators, is we can lose a lot of communication. We can lose a lot of conversation. Yeah, I mean, how many different times, Jim, have even just the two of us, or how many times you've had it happen with you, where you're like, hey, did you read this? And someone goes, no, but I saw something else that was like it. And now you're having this amazing conversation. You bring the two together, and either A, there's different things that maybe need to be tweaked, or maybe, oh, yeah, such and such said this, I'm not so sure. And now you find this ground for conversation. You have this amazing time together to learn with one another, or in a group setting, and have that ability, because we've been reading, to open that channel. And so how important to you is it, Jim, that like even just talking about that song, just knowing that I'm thinking I'm going right to karaoke with this. How many people are out there that don't write songs that should be, or they don't think their story's good enough and they're a speaker, or they want to be a writer. They want someone to read their story. They're like, I don't know. I've only done this, this, and this. It's like, and now because you've been reading, you've been researching the things that you could share with them, be like, hey, I remember this story. I read it. Here's the article. Here's their book. How important to you is it to be able to share those experiences with people because of reading these things and being able to have those stories to help other people out, especially like in your case with karaoke, people who are singing, maybe they do want to be a singer-songwriter and write their own original songs, or maybe they want someone else to write it, but they're still trying to overcome getting on the mic. And now you've got all these different stories, or we're Jim and I are tied very directly and amazingly with Elite Publications and Jesse Bowen. And you think about all these stories out there that people should be writing, and it's like, if we only had more stories to share with them that are overcoming, that are adapting. So how important is that to you, Jim? And share how important it is to me. And what are the different things you're doing to utilize those stories you've read to be able to help others?
Well, I think it's really important, because a lot of times one of the things I'm going into is why people sing specific songs. The words of songs are very powerful. By definition, to know the words in a deeper way, if you look at them, it gives you a chance to really reflect on them, not just hearing somebody sing them, but really read, pause, think about the meaning, underlying meaning behind it, intonations behind it. So it's very important. I mean, really get the essence of what's going on, and I think even, I think of emotions or things that you don't see. They say a picture paints 1,000 words. How about 1,000? How about a word paints 1,000 pictures? I mean, you think about the fact that I'm just throwing out something, movies like martial artist movies are always based on revenge or something like that, some of the Asian movies. But how do you really describe somebody's facial expression if they like, and this child was waiting for the chance to seek revenge, to avenge his father? How do you get that across other than with words and reading the implication of somebody's expression? It's hard to convey all that. And so I think it just gives a deeper reach, meaning, a lot of enrichment, and just a more clarity, and being able to allow you to look at things in a deeper way than you could just by hearing it, somebody say it.
Yeah, and a little side note joke here on when it comes to karaoke and Chris. There are times I wished I would have been reading the words much sooner than when I had them on the screen and got them wrong. So I say yes, it is important to do that. And here's the cool thing about reading is it opens up so many doors for us. It opens up so many different ways.
Absolutely.
Like, as leaders, we should be helping more people. Well, one of the ways we can do that is by reading. Now, whether it's online articles or it's books, so many self-help books out there. And one of the things too, and this is where we kind of come back from the leaders or learners when we talked about these things we've learned and applying what we've learned. This also holds true with reading. There's so many times I hear so many people, oh, I've read all these self-help books, I've done this, I've done that. Okay. And then we just stop. And well, what did you get from it? Well, I read it. Time out. I'm glad you read it. What did you get from it? Just reading.
Yep, very important.
Yes. Apply what you're reading. Apply what you're learning. Take the time to discern these different things that will help make you better so you can be a better servant leader. And what that leads to, which is that we're right at the halfway point here of our half hour, is transitioning from just every time I say leaders or readers, everybody goes, yeah, I read books. And of course I turn to, well, which books? What books are you reading? What are you doing with them? How are you utilizing them? Give me the list. There may be there's plenty of them out there that I know I haven't read yet. Oh, I'll check that one out and I'll use it. And the next thing, though, that this really helps to open up for us is reading beyond a book or an article. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm talking about reading the situations. Okay, we're transitioning.
Nice.
Yeah, we're transitioning a little bit here. Leaders are readers is not just the fact that you read books. Okay,
Very
take
good.
the things that you've learned from those books that you read from them and learn how to read different situations. Learn how to read different people. Remember, leaders are listeners. Leaders are communicators. Leaders are leaders are learners. Sorry, and when we're doing that, we're learning about other people. So learn to read the situation. I'll use my wife as an example because we don't just talk organizational development on here. We talk, in family, marriage, our kids, stuff like that. My daughter comes up and she's, flopping around. You read the situation. She's in a great mood. She's probably coming to tell you something that's fun or funny. But then when she comes up around the corner, she goes, you got to read that situation as she's not happy about something. And it's probably her brother. But as parents, we learn to read these expressions on our kids' faces. And it's funny. One or two responses comes out of my wife or myself of, oh, hey, sweetheart, how are you doing? Or, uh-oh. And it can be the same in organizational development. Learning to read the very people, their expressions. Or reading the things they send to us. How many times as a leader have you sat back or you had a leader above you and you sent them this email? And we always ask, let's change your language here. We always ask, did you get my email? Yeah, okay, cool. And we just assume they read it. Never assume anything, okay? Because nothing gets done. nothing gets done. And so you're sitting back going, no. Here's the question I asked. Did you read the email? What are we getting from it? And so learning how to read the situation, because we're reading the messages, we're reading their faces, we're reading body language. And I'm going to kick it over to Jim. Jim, how important is it to read the audience when you're hosting and emceeing something, or you're doing karaoke? How important is it to read the audience as a leader? Oh, you're muted, buddy. Jim, you're muted.
Well, you have to understand, what you're working with usually. And if you're able to read the audience, I love how you transition. I wasn't even thinking about reading in that context.
Real quick, most people don't. That's why I started with the book part, because when we announce leaders or readers, most everybody goes, oh, yeah, I read stuff. There's more to it than that. So, yes, keep going.
Yeah. Well, I know, but I think that's brilliant, So, and when you understand the importance of reading an audience, because you might be dealing with certain things that can be enhanced, or you might just completely miss the mark of opportunity if you don't read the room properly. For instance, okay, I made this comment to somebody, right? You have a bunch of, let's say, real estate agents in a room. Let's say we're doing karaoke or any event, right? Versus a bunch of school teachers. All right. If you don't read it properly and you just feel like, oh, I can just use all my analogies about teaching, or about real estate, excuse me, to teachers, let's go that way, then probably it's not going to apply as much if you haven't read the room. That's not necessarily what they're looking to do. I'm not saying they wouldn't have any interest, but if you can relate it to kids, teaching students and stuff, being able to read a room, determines your outcome potentially. I mean, if you don't read it properly, let's say if I have a bunch of teachers and I start to think, well, they all want to learn about finances and stuff. Probably not. If you talk to a lot of teachers, they may be kind of interested. That's not their core interest, but you got to be able to understand what is needed in the audience. Is the audience happy, sad? Are they up? Are they down? Are they connected with what you're doing? If you don't read the room well, they're not connected yet, and you're trying to make all these jokes and you don't spend the time to really start getting them connected first, then you're probably doing them a disservice and you a disservice, because you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. So reading a room is really important. Our events, we got to read, where are people coming in from? Are they having a tough day? It's been really hot here recently too. They're coming in. You've got to kind of, well, I was going to say warm them up, but if they're hot, you're not going to warm them up. But you got to be able to kind of connect with them a bit, get them oriented before they're going to be able to really have a great time. You know what I mean? And so very, very important to read a room, because that's going to determine your content, your approach, your timing, everything. Really important.
Yeah, it is. It goes the same with, leading teams and managing things. I think at different trainings I've been a part of, and walk in the room and I'm going to speak, and you can tell no one wants to be there. No one wants to be there. I mean, you walk in the room and you're the speaker, and even you're kind of like, I don't know if I want to be here. And so, and you as the speaker, you as the leader, manager, whatever, you have to flip that script. And the only way you're going to do this is by reading the room, reading what's going on, and not from the vulgar standpoint that can be utilized, but read between the lines too. Is there something else going on? Are people not engaged at an event that Jim's doing because right now all they care about is that glass of water that the server's getting ready to bring because it's that hot out?
Right.
I mean, honestly, I know I've been a part of a few events where I was like, man, I ain't clapping or cheering for nothing until that glass of ice water shows up. I've been down that road, and it's not the nicest way to do it. But once I got that water, man, I was engaged. And so, then, when do we start? Well, read the room. Is everybody ready? Or when it comes to training or teaching your teams, are they ready? Have you prepped them ahead of time? Have they read the material ahead of time? Did you encourage reading more in the book sense? Are you encouraging that? And that's a big thing as a leader, is encouraging people and teaching people how to read the room, or to make sure that the material is read right. And so, I liken this to a couple different examples as far as just reading as in reading ahead. There's a lot of times when you're reading a book and there's a mention of something in chapter 2, but it doesn't come through until chapter 11. And so they call that foreshadowing, right? I also call it playing the video forward or thinking ahead. When we would read the fire as firefighters, especially, in any position, but especially as an officer, as you were getting ready to give your report on the radio, especially if you were first, and you're getting ready to tell everybody what they're coming into, because you're the first one there. You're the one setting the stage. And you get on, and we call what's called bag the fire. Been, at, and going. You got to read the fire. Where has it been? Where is it at? And where is it going? I think back to my days at Pizza Hut when I would write the schedule and who I would schedule on which days. And I was training a new manager, and they were looking at it, and they were like, how do you determine who goes where? And it just kind of came out of my mouth. I said, well, I read it. Like, well, I read the schedule too, Chris. I'm supposed to be here Friday at 4:00. I was like, no. I read into the schedule. I read into our employees. I said, okay, teach me that. What does that mean? I said, I read into, if it's Friday, the new guy should not be the first person touching pizzas. Just being honest. They're not going to be fast enough yet. We're going to teach them and train them, and very talented people come through. But I had to read ahead to make that decision to say, you know what? Yeah, Mondays and Tuesdays, and Sundays, slowest days in the store. That's when the new person is learning how to pick up the speed. But man, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday especially, no. Sorry, till you show yourself and prove yourself. But I would read ahead the situation, read it ahead. What is the best setup? Reading into it. What is the best setup for the best outcome? So, Jim, how are some different ways that you read ahead and look at situations? What are different things that you pull together in your mind as you're setting something up? What are some different tips and tricks you have for everybody reading ahead so you do get those positive outcomes that you can get?
Yeah. Well, first off, for me, I always want to know what objective I'm trying to achieve first, because that's always my reference point. And then from there, I can say, okay, what are the different outcomes? If we want to engage an audience, and let's just say in entertainment, it could be karaoke, it could be trivia, it could be anything. My end result is to have people have a great time and feel really special. I know the prize is going to be really key. Is there a prize? Is there acknowledgement? What, how are we going to achieve that goal? But then just reading ahead, what are the possibilities, the pitfalls that would prevent that from happening? Timing, not having things that connect with the audience, just different things that are essential to make sure things are running well. Looking at the room, are people smiling, laughing? Are they reading the room literally to see if they're engaged? Because if they're not, and you just continue on and on and on and on, and your end result is to have them really inspired, connected, and having fun, then you're not going to achieve it if you don't read the room and read the possible outcomes and stuff as well. So you have to read the outcomes and see if it's connected with what you're wanting to achieve. So I think it's very important. That's what it is for me. It's all about the objective I want to obtain, and then just reading the room and just the various possibilities, and then the what if this was happening? What if people aren't laughing? What are the things that I'm going to be doing? What is my solution to solve that problem to get them more engaged? So being able to anticipate the different sort of scenarios that can happen, reading the room properly, being able to read it so that you can respond accordingly is so very key.
And how do we know these things, folks? How we know them is because we've read what other people have done. Coming full circle here, right back to the literal meaning of reading here. We've read what other people have done. We've read our reviews. I read my reviews. Why not? How can I improve? Now, some are just like, okay, cool, gotcha. Others are like, I didn't think of that. Or, man, that was a glowing review. I got to make sure I do that again. We read the reviews. We ask people to give us feedback. Read that feedback. Like Jim just said himself, you're speaking a little more towards a stage presence as far as whether it's speaking, karaoke, playing music. I think back to a story about reading the crowd. Man, I was backstage. I was working, and this great concert. I thought it was going really well, but it was on like a Tuesday, and it was late, and like there was hardly any. Like half the arena wasn't even full. It was pretty sad. And then the audience was there was not engaging at all. And all of a sudden the backstage manager goes, y'all can cut out. We're shutting down. I was like, what? He goes, yeah, he's going to play this song. He's hopping off. He's like, peace out. There was no encore. He read the crowd, and honestly, rightfully so that he left early. Rightfully so, because no one was engaged. They read the crowd. But how do we learn these things? How do we pick these things up? Well, going back to last week, leaders are learners, and this week, leaders are readers. Learn from each other. Learn from these different things. Apply them. Read about them. Look, there's articles everywhere. And if you're not able to find an article to read, screw it. Watch the video. I don't care. The point is, be continually developing yourself. Because here's what's going to happen. When people ask me, Chris, what books do you read? I tell them I read this, and this book. And I don't just say, here, go read it. I tell them what I got out of it. Or, because we do have some agreements between a few of us where we don't ruin the book, kind of like talking about a movie. Hey, Jim gets to go see it on opening day, but Jim, I'm not seeing it until day 2. Shush your mouth until I get to go see it, right? I have a group of friends. We do the same thing with our books. We all get them ordered, whatever, get them here, and we read them, and then we talk about it. Okay, whatever you have communicated in that. The thing is, open those doors of communication. Remember, it goes all the way back to when we first started talking about all this. Open door policy. Well, that open door policy doesn't just extend to who you're working with. It extends with yourself too. When you open that door to yourself, to your own personal development, you're also opening it to others. You're setting that stage. You're setting that example of what other people can and will be doing. And then the lines of communication and conversation, I got to tell you, my life and my mind and my business and everything I'm doing has opened up in ways that I never thought possible. No pun intended on the opening up, as in opening a book. See what I did there, Jim? I know it wasn't a good one, but I still like it. So anyways, the point is, open yourselves up to being readers, to being learners, to all these different things that will help make you better, so you're helping make other people better. Continue to step up along in this process. Jim, closing comments from you, and how do we reach you?
Yeah. Well, I hope you take this to heart. Reading, whether it be physically reading, that's always a good thing. We talked about that. But being able to read people, read a room, read a situation is so very key. So you know what you can provide to your audience. JimTChong.com, or you can go to ZoomTurtle.com as well, just to see the plethora of things that are going on. But also Global Cooperative Chamber, on Wednesdays at noon. But love what you're talking about here. Leaders are readers today, but just true leadership. There really is a strategy. You don't just be a leader because you are. You do need to think, engage, and plan accordingly. Thank you. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And something that you said there that just reminds me of different things. So just these collaborations, and we say this quite a bit on the show here, is you want to be a true leader, be true to yourself so you can be true to others. And that can stem from a plethora of things that you can be doing to make yourself better. And that's the whole point and goal of this show, is we make each other better. It's Proverbs 27:17. It's iron sharpens iron, so one should sharpen another. It's exactly what we're here to do. And it's through these various topics that we get to do that and are honored to do it with you all. So if you ever want to join in on the show, reach out to Jim or myself. Of course, if you know Mike Van Pelt and you're watching this, you can reach out to him. We'll get you hooked up. Love to have you on. Love to have you discuss one of these topics with us. And if you're looking for more leadership dynamics and leadership communication, training and development, safety prevention for crisis management, let me know, Chris at eaglefireenrichment.com, or you can go to the website, www.eaglefireenrichment.com. Connect with me there. Of course, I'm also on social media. But until next week, as always, have your best day ever by making every day great. Remember, you can't never did. God bless us all. Thank you so much for tuning in today.